Hey everybody, in this video I want to talk about what I think is the best budget distortion pedal out there. It's the Behringer TM300 tube amp modeler pedal, and this thing's only 25 bucks, and you really can get like a huge variety of tones out of this thing. Everything from like vintage punk to blues to hardcore to like super thick grunge to metal, like all kinds of different tones out of this thing. I'm going to show you how to use it. It's a little different than like a normal distortion pedal. There's a few different settings. I'm going to explain each of those settings. Then I'm going to show you some of the sweet spots I found for different kinds of tones that I use frequently, so I can save you some time in getting up and going with this thing. And there should be a link here somewhere. You can order it from Amazon. I do get a commission off of that, but I'm not getting like paid by Behringer or anything to do this. I just really like this pedal. And like I said, it's only 25 bucks. It's probably one of the best deals out there. All right, so a little bit of background on this thing. Back in the 80s, there was this new kind of amp modeler that came out called a Sans amp. And it was one of the earliest amp modelers. And the idea behind the Sans amp was that you could have basically, it was like a big pedal that you could plug into and model different amps. So it was kind of interesting. They got really famous because Kurt Cobain used it for most of the In Utero tour. And then I think they reissued it later and they kind of tweaked it a little differently and kind of made it a little bit more customizable and a little bit more user-friendly, intuitive. That is basically what this, I believe, is trying to copy, is that the second version of the Sans amp. So this works essentially like any other distortion pedal, except it's got a few settings that are a little bit different than a normal distortion pedal. So we've got our standard knobs. The level obviously controls the volume. You've got the lows and highs, and then you have the drive, which obviously controls the distortion or the gain. And then we've got these three switches that are underneath the dials. And the first one is mic, and you have three different positions you can go with: classic, center, and off axis. So if you go with classic, it's kind of like almost like a pulled back from the amp type sound. So you're it's supposed to kind of mimic like maybe some ambience from the room. And then you've got center, which is like a close miking, so it's a little bit harsher. And then you've got off X, which is off axis, and that's like a little bit like of a smoother. So these are basically like preset settings to make it easy to sculpt your tone without having to like dial everything in. And then the second switch we have is the mode, and basically you've got clean, high gain, and hot. And so clean is obviously going to be a cleaner tone. And then you can also control like how clean with the drive knob. So that's supposed to mimic a clean. And then the high gain is pretty high gain. And the hot is a little different. It seems pretty similar in gain, but it's a little different tonal qualities. And then the last switch you've got is the amp. And this is like what I think is probably one of the coolest features of this. So you've got a setting for Tweed, British, and California. And so the Tweed's going to be kind of trying to mimic a Fender, like bright, clean amp with like some heavy kind of bass response. And you can control the drive on that. So you can almost mimic like a pushed Fender amp, which I think is really cool. And then you've got the British, which is like a Marshall, and you can get like some super thick like Marshall distortion on it and lots of sustain on it. And then California is really cool. It's like kind of a more modern tone. It's like a Mesa style tone. And again, you can get like super thick distortion on this thing. And it's one of my favorites for getting kind of like a more like kind of thick like grunge, like Nirvana or like Sonic Youth or some other type of bands like of that nature's kind of thick distortion sounds. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I just want to go through each of the features and kind of show you how it changes the tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm running my Fender Twin Reverb amp, which is going to be kind of interesting because when I run the Tweed, that's actually supposed to imitate like a Fender, so we're going to have double Fender. But what I've got is I've got all of the high, mids, and lows on 5, so I've got a pretty neutral setting. I do have the bright switch on just so you can kind of hear some of the clarity in the amp. So here's my clean tone. So that's what we're starting with. All right, so now I turn the drive up. I've got it at like almost 3 o'clock. And what we've got here in this setting, we've got it on the classic mic placement. We've got the mode as clean, and we've got the amp setting to a Fender or a Tweed, and we've got the drive turned up a little bit. And this is going to kind of mimic a tube screamer or like an overdrive pedal. So through like a Fender amp. So you can kind of hear it really kind of has that kind of pushed tube amp sound. Now, I'm gonna just change the mic placement real quick so you can kind of hear how it affects it. Now we're going center. Now we're going off axis. So kind of subtle differences, but like my preference really is that center. Now we're gonna go to the different modes that we can use. So we went from clean, now we're gonna go to high gain and then to hot. So here's high gain. So you've got kind of a thick, more modern distorted sound. Now we're gonna go to hot. So now this sounds to me more like a DS1. It's a really trebly kind of distortion, but again, kind of gives you like the sweet spots of different distortion pedals and overdrive pedals, like in just a switch. And so lastly, we're gonna change the amp setting. So we're gonna go from the Fender to the British. So this is supposed to be like a Marshall. And this is actually in the clean setting, so you can see it's a really thick, but we can dial back that overdrive a little bit. And then I'm also going to move the mic position to off axis so it's not as harsh. And you can kind of hear we've got almost a Marshall-y kind of effect. I wouldn't say it's too close to a Marshall, but you can dial in some interesting tones with it. And you got lots of sustain. And now we're staying in the Marshall, and then we're going to the high gain mode, and we're going to go off axis on the mic placement so that we can get like takes a little bit of the harsh edge off of it. You can kind of see this is a little bit more of a Marshall effect here, that high gain set on the British setting. And we might actually want to go to like the center of the classic and hear what that sounds like. So here's the classic. So here we've got it on the center miking position, we've got it on the high gain and in the Marshall. So you got a little bit more of a modern distorted tone, kind of almost a metal style. And then lastly, we're gonna go to probably my favorite setting for this pedal, which is we're gonna go to the California amp. We're gonna put it in high gain, and I've got it on the center mic position. And this gets you like tones that are very difficult to kind of get elsewhere through pedals. It's got crisp mids, it's got some fuzz, and it's got like endless sustain, and you can get like a wall of fuzz. And I've traditionally found this hard to get with like a single pedal. Like I've almost had to stack pedals, which raises a lot of other issues. So this is really my favorite setting here. So. And then if we turn the drive all the way up, we can get this like wall of fuzz with like never-ending sustain that sounds really cool. I've got the lows at about 3 o'clock. I've got the highs at about 9 o'clock. And I'm in the center mic position. I've got high gain on the mode, and I'm in the California amp still. So here's what it sounds like. So what I really like about that last setting is that you can get all of that fuzz, but you don't lose that clarity that happens with a lot of pedals. A lot of pedals start to get kind of muddy when you start getting into that level of overdrive or distortion, and this one really kind of keeps those mids really present and keeps that clarity, which is hard to get anywhere else. So that's it for this one. I'm going to put a link up here if you want to get one of these things. They're only 25 bucks. I think it's probably one of the best values for any guitar pedal that is available right now. And remember to like and subscribe, that way you're notified every time I post new videos like this. And also check out my website, scottobryanguitar.com. I have the tab for hundreds of punk rock and grunge songs up there, and I'll see you guys next time.